Well, Harmy, I must say, all the talk from day two was how the Test match was going to go well into a fifth day. In fact, you and John Norman featured that in your post days reports for the first 3 days, and I must say that everybody thought that it would. Nobody could quite see that collapse coming in the final session on day four, bowled out in a session. But it was a really cracking Test match up till that point.
Yeah, it was. I thought, Manners, it was a really good advert Test cricket. I thought the West Indies, with the game finishing early at Lords, give themselves 7 days to prepare for Trent Bridge, which I thought, apart from the last session on day 3 and the last session on day 4, they were well in the game. I mean, going into the last session on day 3, England were effectively 99 for 3 with Brooke and Root at the crease. And then, obviously, the last session on day 4, they lost all their wickets and got bowled out by Shoaib Bashir. So I think there are signs that the West Indies are getting better. I think there's a togetherness about this West Indian team, even if there's not a huge amount of sort of Test match skill level when it comes to batting in their batting department. I thought England's bowling attack was, I think it covered all bases. I thought Chris Silverwood got better as they went on, pitched it up, got it to swing a little bit more as he got more confidence. Atkinson looked as though he'd come off the back of 12 wickets at Lords, which was, it's not a criticism. I think these are the question marks we all knew that we're going to have to get dust the back game, like Test match after Test match. And Mark Wood will bowl a hell of a lot worse and pick up 8 wickets in a match as opposed to 2 wickets in a match for the sort of pace he bowled at. But I think I said to John Norman at the end of last night, I think the hardest decision for Ben Stokes, Brendan McCullum, Luke Wright, and Rob Key wasn't, I don't think, the tap on the shoulder to Jimmy Anderson, because that was coming, that was inevitable. He's 41 years old. I think it was to trying to move on from Jack Leach. When Ben Stokes has come into this job, he's backed Jack Leach from the very, very start, and a lot of question marks on it. No, Jack's my man. Jack's my man. But we've seen Shoaib Bashir, Manners. We've seen him very, very closely in India for them first 2 Test matches when we were on the ground. And there was just something about him then, and there still is something about him now, which intrigued me about where his ceiling level was going to be and how good he could become. And you asked me a question just before you came on air. Did Shoaib Bashir bowl the West Indies out, or did the West Indies give him the wickets? He bowled them out. For me, he bowled them out. You know, it wasn't the greatest ball, the first one, the under edge, but it was a good catch by Jamie Smith, who actually had a really good Test match behind the stumps as well. But then the second one, the nick to slip, good catch from Root. LBW was a good bit of bowling, changed his lines a little bit. And then, I mean, the ball he didn't get Holder out with, when it came back through the gate, you know, the Graham Swan to Ricky Ponting, Michael Vaughan to Sachin Tendulkar on that ground, the perfect off spinner through the gate, just missed the top of off stump, and then he got one onto off stump. I thought it was a really, really high class bit of 4th day bowling from an off spinner who, you know, has got huge potential in the game.
It's his 3rd 5-wicket haul in just 5 Test matches. And he's now got 24 wickets at under 30, 29.8. He's like all off spinners. He needs to bowl a lot of overs, doesn't he? And that was becoming a problem at Somerset because he wasn't playing for them. He actually spoke to Sky Sports straight afterwards about and addressed the county issue.
A lot has happened in the last 2 years, and I can't get ahead of Leachy at Somerset. And understandably, he's obviously played a lot more cricket than I have, and yeah, just a lot of things happening. But yeah, just I guess take things slowly.
Are those conversations ongoing then? Because you need to bowl.
Look, I'm not trying to think about it too much, just trying to focus on England stuff at the moment. But I'm sure I'll get around to that.
That's Shoaib Bashir discussing not being Somerset's #1, but being England's #1 spinner. I wondered whether he was going to be a sort of one-off specialist selection for the Tour of India. You know, there was a lot made about the stats and the analysis that he was tall, that he bowled with a high arm action, and that he emulated someone like Axar Patel in terms of the height with which he bowled. But yeah, as you said, Ben Stokes endorsed him massively before the start of this summer.
He did, and if you cast you remember back to when he had the visa problems going into India, he was selected and everybody's going, well, he's going for experience. England have seen him on a stream ball into Alistair Cook. If you remember that press conference with Ben Stokes talking about Bashir going back, Ben was straight away saying he's not here for experience. You play. And a lot of journalists and a lot of us cricket pundits were like, really? I mean, he's 18, 19 years old. He's had 2 counties. He can't get a game for Somerset because the one that's in position for England is back up. And Ben's looking at us like he often does in press conferences where he gets spiky and he has to go back. He's like, no, he's here to play. And a lot of people, that raised a lot of eyebrows to people going, well, are you just saying that to give him some confidence off the back of what's happened with his visa and he's had to go home? And then he said it again for the 3rd time. He was like, no. When he gets here, there's a good chance this kid will play because we think he's very good. And I think from that moment, I was like, let's see what happens. And then I seen him bowl and thought, you know what? This kid could have a big future in English cricket. And his temperament's very, very good. I think his ability not to panic when carnage is going around him, especially when he was in India, his temperament for me was very, very good. And I think he's shown, like he's done, his skill set, his ability to turn the ball. And he's learned in this but he's understanding of his lengths and his lines over the course of 4 days of the test match. Sky showed where his lines were on days 1 and 2 to where they were on days 3 and 4. And for a young man who hasn't bowled a great deal of overs when it comes to off spinners, like you just mentioned, the need to bowl, his ability to move the length and line over the course of that 2 days, which was right for that surface, tells you that as he goes and gets more experience, I think he's only going to get better and better.
Okay, we could talk about Joe Root and Harry Brook. Both of them scored brilliant hundreds, but we should talk about Ollie Pope. They say it's a mark of a class player when he can score 100 or make significant runs when he's not playing at his best. He was dropped a couple of times. He had a poor start to the summer for Surrey, but he's now got 2 50s and 100 in the series. I don't think that he was at his best, to be honest, was he? But more importantly, has someone finally got him to calm down at the crease?
Yeah, he was a little bit less frantic. I don't think it was. I don't think they sort of give him a couple of smokes and he calmed him down. Yeah, I don't think they calmed him down properly. But I think there was times where the roller skates were actually tied together as opposed to having so far apart. But joking aside, this is the way you can. Ollie Pope's going to play. He is going to look a little bit frantic. Nasser Hussain looked very frantic when he went out to bat. Well, for England so many times at number 3. You talk to a lot of players that played and batted after Nasser, and that curtain rail bat, pushing at everything. You were off your feet, or you were off your seat many times if you batted number 4, number 5 for England behind Nasser Hussain early on, and Nasser didn't have a bad career. So when you look at Ollie, he's not sort of taking one for the team because somebody has to bat at number 3. He's vice captain. They've given him some responsibility on that front. They say he doesn't look comfortable early on. It doesn't look comfortable early on, but that doesn't mean it's not for him. If this is the way he gets through that initial 20 balls, then he can look frantic as much as he wants for me if he goes on to get hundreds like he has done in Hyderabad and obviously in Trent Bridge. So I thought he got dropped on 40, he got dropped on 50. You have to capitalise. You don't give it away. And when this kid makes hundreds, he makes big hundreds. And I don't see this England top 7 changing between now and the end of the Ashes, bar an injury. And Ollie Pope is, if he is that one place where you feel as though that England can be got at, if he keeps making hundreds and keeps scoring runs, and yes, he might look a little bit frantic early doors, but it's a great sign because he didn't look at his fluid best. But given chances, great players make people pay when you're given a chance, and I think he did that at Trent Bridge in this game.
You know what I think the Bazball has evolved into, Harmy? It's now not a question of playing scoop shots or ramp shots. I think it's just don't leave so many balls. Because I mean, that's honestly, I mean, Harry Brook, I think is going to be a genius. I think he's got the makings of an absolute genius. But honestly, they're scoring at 4 and over, and it just looked like normal proper batting. Just that in days gone by, the top 6 left a lot more balls.
But as a bowler, you were told just bowl it through to the wicketkeeper. You know, whenever you're feeling a bit uneasy on your action or you're not feeling rhythm, just pick a spot on the pitch, get it through the wicketkeeper, and build some confidence from that. It doesn't happen anymore, especially against the England team, because England, whatever lengths they feel as though they can score from. Ben Duckett, I mean, it was ridiculous at the start of the game, but it was proper scoring shots. It was. There was a lot of talk the night before that Ben Duckett's his girlfriend, I'm not sure if he's married, a girlfriend or wife is about to give birth. And it looked as though at 1 minute past 11, he got a message over the tannoy to say, your wife or your girlfriend is 2 centimeters dilated. You better hurry up because you're going to have to get to the hospital if you want to see the birth of your child. And he came out playing, he played some great shots, no slogging, it was just proper cricket shots. And I think Ben Duckett's leave percentage in his career is 2%. And I think the next who has batted for a period of time, I think it's 20% in Test match cricket, their leave percentage. He is so difficult to bowl to. And when you get off to a start like that with Crawley as well, I know Zach had a game to forget, and no criticism there. But when you get a start like Zach and Ben Duckett have got, I mean, the bowlers are under pressure up until lunch, and normally it's the bowlers that put pressure on the batters. How many times you see, man, if you win the toss, you bat first. There's still a bit in it first hour. The old cliches. There's still a bit in it first hour. You've got to get over the moving ball. You've got to just sort of dig in and get yourself to lunch. I mean, we were 50 for 1 or 4 overs. I mean, it's a Test match. I mean, you look at it. England's white ball team made a mistake by not opening a batting with them in the Caribbean in the World T20, because I don't think we were ever 50 for 1 or 4 overs. So, joking aside, I think Ben has. I think he's turned himself into another great option for England at the top under this new regime that constantly puts the opposition under pressure. And for me, that's what Bazball's all about. Can you play with freedom, and can you put the pressure on the opposition? And I think with Duckett and Crawley at the top, they will do more often than not.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about Chris Woakes next, but we're out of time in this section, so I'm going to squeeze it into part 2. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison, as we continue to look back at England's 241-run win over the West Indies at Trent Bridge. Next up, we'll discuss the West Indies and their approach and what do they do for the 3rd test. And we'll also look ahead to that 3rd test at Edgbaston. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, and Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. And a reminder, you can now watch us on YouTube. Just head over to the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel and subscribe. We'll talk about the West Indies in just a sec, Harmy, but a lot of people have asked me, at least half a dozen anyway, have said, if Jimmy Anderson got the tap on the shoulder because he's not going to be around for the next Ashes, what's Chris Woakes doing in the team? And we all know what a fabulous, skillful bowler he is and what a magnificent man he is as well. And he did take 6 for 112. And when the ball was doing something, he looked very dangerous, as he always does. But, he's bowling 77, 78 miles an hour, and he averages 50 overseas. So it's a fair question, and I don't have an answer. Do you?
It is a fair question, and it's a question I've asked a couple of times. What's the difference between Woakes and Anderson? I think Woakes gives you a lot more from a batting point of view. I still think England need to shore up and make sure that, even though the batters bat and bowlers bowl, you have to have that number 8. And that number 8, I don't think, out of the young bowlers, there's the sort of strength of option. Not that I'm saying he should be playing because he's batting, far from it. I think in England, he averages 22. I think we all know he's gone through a difficult patch. He hasn't played much cricket throughout this summer. I think we'll see with Chris Woakes, the more he plays, the better he'll be. From Lords to Trent Bridge, and it wouldn't surprise me if he goes and gets a big bag of wickets at Edgbaston on his home ground next week. There's a few technical issues. I think Stuart Broad highlighted one, which was getting too close to stumps. I seen footage of him, the way he was sort of holding the ball, and seemed to be a little bit further back in his hand. And when you do that, you grab it a bit too tight, and you're a bit anxious. You drag it down and bowl a bit too short. And I think there was times, especially in the early part of this Test match, he was bowling just that little bit too short, and at the pace he's bowling at, it becomes non-effective. I think Broad and Anderson under Stokes was told to pitch it up that little bit more. And I think Stokes needs to tap Chris Woakes on the shoulder and say, look, we're not bothered about the sort of boundaries. I want you to try and get it up that little bit fuller, see if you can get it to swing. And I think Chris Woakes is trying that. But I think the real answer is you still need to win. And I still think you need an experienced bowler. I still think you need a holding bowler in every conditions, not just in England, in every conditions. And Chris Woakes might not be that holding bowler in Pakistan. He might not be that holding bowler in Australia. That holding bowler might have to be someone like Matt Potts. But you still have to, when you're trying to find a formula, you still have to have variation in your side. And I think Woakes gives you that variation. If you've not got Anderson, Woakes gives you that variation. With Wood, with Atkinson's pace, Pennington's probably going to come in at Edgbaston. So I think he does give you a huge value playing cricket in England. And we don't know what he's going to be like in Australia or Pakistan or New Zealand, because every time he's had the chance, he's always been second fiddle. He's always come on to bowl when, the Kookaburra ball's got a bit softer. And so I get the argument, and the argument is fair and it's right. I'd like to see him go somewhere in the winter and see what that argument's like without Anderson, without Broad, and see what he's like at leader of the pack. First over, let him go and see where he goes to, because he's still going to have a variation in attack. So for me, I didn't have a problem with Chris Woakes. I understood the argument, but I still think you need to have a holding bowler, an experienced bowler, and England still need to win every single Test match. And that's why you need the variation, and that's why I still keep picking Chris Woakes.
All right, we can talk about the West Indies batting, but it's the bowling that I think is perhaps more of a concern. Anyway, let's hear from Kraigg Brathwaite, the captain, first of all. He was understandably relieved at a much improved performance.
I think that escalated pretty quickly. But when you started your second innings, did you think you had a decent chance of success?
Yeah, for sure. Rain was on our mind as a team. But pretty much we lost all our wickets in one session, so that was not good enough.
It looks a lot harder to bat in your second innings. It looks harder to bat today. How do you reflect in that light then on that decision of the toss?
To be honest, the pitch was quite good today. So I felt as though it's still a good pitch. We just ain't bat good enough. It's simple as that.
A disappointing result, but actually it took 2 hours ago. It seemed even game was still in it. How do you reflect on the game as a whole? Again, I suppose there were positives.
Yeah, a big positive obviously is our first innings. Scoring 400 runs. That was great. For a guy making his maiden 100 as well, I think that was good. I think with the ball, we weren't as good as we supposed to be in the first innings. We dropped a few chances, which would happen, but I think we need to be a lot more disciplined. We're getting hit, both sides of the pitch a little too much, too easy at times. So that's one thing we got to get better at, because the easy is probably 100 or 120 runs too many in the first innings, especially if you caught better. Obviously, as I said, that happens. But a positive takeaway is first innings, the runs we scored. And obviously the challenge is to do it 2 times, because obviously about twice in the Test match.
Kraigg, obviously you faced a lot of great fast bowlers in world cricket. How quick was that from Mark Wood, and how tough is it to face?
Yeah, it was quick, but we didn't bat long enough, so But yeah, it was quick.
And Bashir in the last innings, I mean, from where you were standing, was it turning a lot? Was it turning a bit?
I mean, it wasn't there longer when he came on, to be honest. So yeah, I can't speak on that.
Kraigg, at this moment, how sort of torn are you between encouragement, obviously a much more pleasant performance than a week ago at Lords, and disappointing with how that session's ended up going?
Disappointed, because obviously, we could do a lot better than what we showed today. But the main thing is to learn from it. It's gone, it's history, you can't bring it back. Test cricket will always bring, challenges, batsman or bowler. But yes, we got some positives again that we can speak about. And it's important that we just learn from different scenarios, different situations in a test match. Because, 240 odd runs remaining. Potentially if we had, 6, 7 wickets in hand in day 5. So, we could think about all these things and see we'd be pretty not far away. But it's important to learn.
Yeah, so is that the message for the next, obviously, got to start again in 2 days. It's about making good on those learning experiences and getting up that curve.
Yeah, for sure. I think the more you play, and the more in these type of situations, pressure situations, playing international cricket, and you learn. And once you're learning, and once you're thinking about how to get better, it could only be beneficial for us. So, my thing for the boys once again, I mean, it's history. It's gone. The 2 defeats are gone. We still have, 5 test matches remaining for this year. So we keep learning, and it could only, by the end of the year, you'll be better off once we have that correct mindset.
It's Kraigg Brathwaite. He doesn't give much away to the media, but I think he's captained a very unsteady ship for a number of years now. It's hard. It's hard work captaining a winning team in Test cricket, but when you lose more than you win, it's very, very hard. So I'm backing him for some runs actually at Edgbaston. Kavem Hodge, wonderful 100, Harmy, and again, our eye is naturally drawn to the fact that the West Indies made 457 after 120 and 130 at Lords, but it's the bowling that, Alzarri Joseph bowls wicket-taking balls. Most of them can bowl wicket-taking balls. The only holding bowler is Jason Holder, as you say. He's the man who can bowl maidens and a pile of dot balls. He didn't have a good test match with the ball. But Alzarri Joseph, he goes for 6 and over. And like I said, he bowls wicket-taking balls, but there's a boundary ball. And same with Shamar Joseph. He bowls beautiful wicket-taking deliveries, but, he's also going at 5 and 6.
Yeah, it is. It's hard from their best bowlers. Without Kemar Roach, their best bowlers are what's playing. Alzari's the one that's probably disappointed most. He's vice captain. And I think when you look at, if you break down this West Indies side, Manners, if you go 1 to 11 and you go good enough to play Test cricket or, comfortable in Test match surroundings, you're probably saying 5, possibly 6, you'd say, from West Indies' point of view, and especially in teams in the past, you'd say, yeah, they're Test cricketers. And most of them are bowlers. You'd say Alzarri Joseph, Test match cricketer, Shamar Joseph, after what he did in Brisbane, Jason Holder, Jaden Seals. You're looking at 5 or 6, and you're putting Kraigg Brathwaite into a bunch of bowlers and saying the rest of them, Mikael Louis, take him out of it a little bit because I think there's potential in him. Young lad. I think he might have something for the future. But I think that would be the frustrating thing for me of Kraigg Brathwaite, is that we've got ourselves in the game. And, again, 2 bad sessions, lackadaisical, whether concentration, whatever you want. But a bowler like Alzarri Joseph, who is naturally aggressive when it comes to lengths, bowling that little bit fuller, trying to make something happen, and like you say, taking wickets, and wicket-taking bowler, coming up against an England team when you are naturally expensive. I mean, that's like a red rag to a bull for the England cricket team. So he's always expensive against anybody else in the world. But when an England team is on there, have got their chests out and are coming hard at you, that 5 and over turns into 7.5, 8 and over, and you where you're gonna stem the tide. So I think I'm intrigued to see where they go in Edgbaston. If I was them, I'd play 2 spinners. I'd bring Moti in for one of the seamers and say, well, see we can buy a couple of wickets with a bit of try and get the spin bowlers to some control. Moti's a very, very good one-day bowler, and I thought he bowled all right at Lords. Sinclair bowled all right in the first innings, and he bats a bit, so he strengthens the group. But you're right. You worry about what was, for me, the West Indies' strength. Was if England if the West Indies had a chance to beat England, this was probably before Kemal Roach got injured. It would be because they can bowl England out cheaply. I don't even think they can stop England scoring at this moment in time, and that would worry me if I was a West Indies fan. So I think there was a huge amount of positives in that Test match. Hodge played Wood very, very well, and then scored. A great partnership with Anthony's. Like you say, Mikael Louis has got, I think, some potential. And even Brathwaite himself, Kraigg Brathwaite, the Billy Blocker who just stands there and bats all day. He had 47 or 48 balls in that 4th inning. So he's trying to get on with it himself. So there are positives, but still, the worry would be, what is my strength? And my strength is my bowling. And I don't think they've quite clicked in England yet.
Yeah. If the emphasis on Test match batting these days is about letting your hair down and playing a few more shots, there isn't really a bowling equivalent, is there? I mean, unless you, I'll ask you in part 4, actually. I'll let you think about it. But I wanted to ask you about the West Indies tactics, and do they pack one side of the field and just bowl really, really one side of the wicket? And you can't. There's no equivalent to letting your hair down as a bowler in Test match cricket, is there?
They tried it. They tried bowling one side. They tried to pack the field. Brathwaite tried to pack one side of the field, and if they packed the offside, then, like you said, Alzari Joseph, he bowled 3 balls outside off stump. Think, yeah, we're building some dots, putting some pressure. He bowled that leg stump half volley, and it's clipped for 4 because there's only 2 men on the leg side. You can have a plan. You've got to execute it. I think they've executed their plans, some of their plans, really well. But I think some of the times when the horse has bolted, I mean, he's not just run out of the stables. He's gone out there like an absolute exocet. And unfortunately, they haven't been able to stem the tide.
And we'll bring you updates of the 3rd and final Test match between England and the West Indies over on talkSPORT, with a daily following on podcast with Harmy and John Norman, looking back at all of the action as they have done for the first 2 tests. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll hear exclusively from Australian batter Marnus Labuschagne, who reflects on his stint with Glamorgan.
So Marnus, thanks for joining us on talkSPORT. Yeah, you're at Glamorgan. We want to talk to you really about county cricket, because it's very rare for an overseas player to keep returning to the same county. So what is it about Glamorgan that wants you to keep going back?
Look, I always feel very thankful for Glamorgan for the opportunity they gave me in 2019. Mark Wallace, the director of cricket there, took a little bit of a punt on myself. He obviously heard a little bit about my character, but certainly my statistics and my runs on the board certainly weren't there to probably get an opportunity to be a county overseas. But I was lucky enough to get that opportunity. So that's where it started. And then obviously just the love for the club and wanting to go on the journey to get to Division 1. I think that's really my goal with the club, and I want to make sure we're going in the right direction. And I want to be there when we do go up so we can challenge, in years to come for the big trophy. But I think that's what keeps driving me to come back to the same club, is that, that want and that will for the club to do well and to go up.
And we're seeing with county cricket, every time England lose an Ashes, every time you beat England in an Ashes series, county cricket comes under the radar. From your experience of playing, what do you make of the standard, and do you think that criticism is a bit unfair?
Look, I mean, it is what it is. I think it's different. You guys get, the first class cricket in Australia, without the Duke ball and as much swing and seam, or maybe not as much seam, but as much swing. Guys just grow up in a different fashion. They need to bowl slightly quicker, where guys are playing 14 games plus, 12 one-day games plus 14 T20s. And, some of those guys, bowlers are playing all of those games. They're just not going to be able to bowl 140 plus. So unless you're a good squad like Surrey, that can sort of pick and choose when you play guys like Gus Atkinson, or, you mix it in with your other bowlers. It's very hard to have guys that bowl, that sort of mid 140s, hitting 90. So I think that's always going to be the challenge for county cricket. I think there's certainly, I wouldn't say it's a less skillful in any way. I think it's just, once you start playing Test cricket, you realise, your back foot game needs to be a little bit better. You're going to be challenged with a short ball more. It's a bit quicker pace. So you might have to make some technical changes. So that's probably the only difference for guys to come up into that jump.
And with the county cricket itself, naturally, you saw the likes of Ricky Ponting play for Surrey back in the day, Shane Warne playing for Hampshire. Did seeing those as a young Australian growing up and aspire to be a professional cricketer, did that draw you to England and maybe want to try out playing English cricket domestically?
Oh, look, it's always something I wanted to play because it was always on when I wasn't playing cricket, and I always wanted to play cricket all year round. I wanted to be a professional cricketer. I wanted to continue to get better, play as much as I can. I mean, I'm not going to say those guys really had a great influence, because probably in those early days there wasn't the coverage of Champo cricket or like there is now. So you didn't really always get to see those guys play, county cricket.
Yeah, and just finally on county cricket, we're talking while we're on a long drive to Kent. You're in a motorway service station. You've played blast games a couple of days ago. You got another one tomorrow. What have you made of the schedule in English cricket? This seems relentless for the guys at the moment. And how are you dealing with it?
No, I'm fine. I mean, it's easy to sort of put in 100% when you got a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I leave back for Australia on Monday, so it's one big push for me, and then it's a bit of a break. But for guys that are here all year round, it's a packed schedule. And once again, it comes back to the depth of your squad. Like if you're Surrey or one of the slightly bigger counties, you can sort of work around resting players and sort of getting that balance. But for the smaller counties like ourselves, it's very difficult, because you have guys that have to play every game, and you have to keep going and keep going and keep going. So I think that's the real conversation piece is just, how do you get the right balance? I mean, 14 Champo games, 14 blast games, the 100, and then the one-day comp as well within that. It's it's certainly a lot of cricket.
When you mentioned going back to Australia on Monday, you've got your summer at least India to Australia. How much are you looking forward to that battle again? Because they got one over you last time out. So how much are you looking forward to maybe getting a bit of revenge?
Well, I mean, firstly, we got the one-day series here against England. So I'll be back here in September. So that's probably my next focus point. And then, it'll be a pretty quick shift there to the Test summer.
And you've got the one-day series or the T20 series against Scotland as well, just around that England series. Are you one of those that are putting your hands up? I heard Mitchell Starc during the World Cup say there's a lot of good golf courses in Scotland, so I'll definitely be putting my hand up to play in that series.
I won't be in that series for the T20s. I'll join the squad for the one-dayers in England, but there's plenty of nice courses in England, so we'll certainly be playing a bit of golf in between, that's for sure.
And just on the current Australia Test side you're in, there's so many modern day greats in the game, but there's a lot of talk about them being sort of mid to late 30s now. How much are you, as someone who's 30 now, relishing that challenge of maybe being a leader in that next generation of Australian cricketers potentially coming through in the years to come?
Look, it's always important to make sure you're leading, and for me, leading from the front is with the bat and making sure that I'm scoring runs for Australia. And I think the rest sort of take care of itself. But yeah, it's a great opportunity. Our squad's moving into a slightly different era, but I mean, we still got the likes of Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark, Josh Hazlewood. These guys, they're here. Nathan Lyon. So we got enough guys there. Usman Khawaja. So once they sort of, in the next 4 years, we might be in a slightly different position. But right now we're in a really nice space to take on India.
And you were given the captaincy at Queensland earlier this year. Is captaincy of the Australian Test side perhaps an ambition in the years to come once Paddy gives it up?
Oh, mate, I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. I think, always when this question comes up, if someone asks you if you want to captain the Australian Test side, you're never going to turn that down. But what I would say is for me that the focus is just completely with Queensland. It's captaincy is about leadership, making sure that you're doing the right thing for the team and that you're able to help players achieve their best, and that's all I want to do with Queensland. And the Australian captaincy stuff, that might come up later, and if it does, that's a great opportunity, and we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But right now, it's just relishing this opportunity with Queensland.
And it's obviously you're in England at the minute. There's been a big week for the England's Test side last week. Jimmy Anderson's last Test. Just give us your thoughts on Jimmy and your battles over the years. Now he's retired.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a quality bowler. I think his ability, his longevity, his skill set. I think also his ability to adapt and learn. To see him do so well in the subcontinent for so many years, it's very impressive, and it's something that it's aspiring to see someone at the age of 40 still be able to play so well. So. It's a credit to him.
Just fine.
I mean, any England team that doesn't have Jimmy Anderson in it certainly makes you a little bit more relaxed as an Australian, that's for sure. But I mean, like I said, the new crop of bowlers for England look like they're pretty good. They got some really nice bowlers. They got some pace and bounce. So it's going to be a great summer next year.
And you got the Ashes to come in England in 27 as well. You went so close last year, a 2-2 series draw. Just the fact that you're playing for Glamorgan and have played for Glamorgan for several years in English conditions, does that give you confidence whenever an Ashes series comes around that you have shown that you can do it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think always just playing cricket and being able to learn more conditions, and you're just taking in each game, regardless if you do good or bad, you're just taking in more information. So I think that always helps towards something. But I mean, obviously didn't have the greatest summer last year out in England. Certainly by my standards, that was well down on what I would like. But I mean, that's the reality. I learned a lot from that series, and hopefully when 2027 rolls around, I'll be ready to go, and I would have learnt a lot about my trade and be able to actually win a series in England, rather than just draw it.
And just finally for me, and thanks for your time, you talked about struggling in England last year, but you did get that 100 at Old Trafford in that rain-affected test. So the fact that you've had a bit of a rough patch for your standards, but then came through it with that 100, does that just show the spirit in you and the spirit in this Australia side that they sort of never give up, really?
Yeah, I mean, a 5 test match series, it's always tricky because you're always developing, you're always working towards something, and I felt like by that time in the series I was batting really well, so that was a really good time, and I felt like I was gonna score runs by the time we got to Old Trafford. But yeah, I think that's one thing we've done well as a test team for probably the last 3-4 years, is that we keep finding ways to win games, even if we're behind the 8 ball or not doing that well. Someone always stands up, and that's what that's what's great about this Australian team.
And what's it like being part of that group though? You're in the changing rooms with so many people that will go down as legends of Australian cricket. It must be a pretty good feeling playing in this test side at the minute.
Yeah, I mean we're a very, very good test team at the moment, and we just want to make sure we keep doing that. We keep doing the basics and continue to get better. I think we haven't really played our best yet, and so hopefully the next 18 months we can really show everyone how good this Australian team actually is.
Perfect. We'll leave it there. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you joining us.
Pleasure. Have a great day.
That was Australian batter Marnus Labuschagne speaking with our very own producer, Scott Taylor, from a motorway service station last week. He actually forgot that he was supposed to do the interview, but he good on him. He pulled over and had a chat to Scott. And by the way, George Bailey, the chief selector of Cricket Australia, has confirmed that David Warner will not be playing at the 2025 Champions Trophy after he said last week that he would be open to doing so, having retired. You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Durham Hall of Famer Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll round up the week's other big stories as Jos Buttler's future is again being questioned and Chris Silverwood returns to English cricket. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, and Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. And a reminder, the latest episode of Bumble and Kimber is out now. And on this week's show, they discuss Shane Warne and why he never captained Australia.
Wasn't the kind of person that Australia wanted in front of microphones is very, very clear. And that Cricket Australia at that point was run by James Sutherland, who grew up with Shane Warne, right? They're both cricketers in Melbourne, but I would say that they come from very different kinds of backgrounds. And James Sutherland was obviously, a very conservative person.
Yes.
And has talked about that a lot before. And I think he probably thought there was an element of a lack of control that you could have over Shane Warne. I mean, Shane Warne had a lack of control over himself, let alone anyone else having control over him, right? And that they were nervous about that kind of thing. And if you go through Australian captains, they are a certain kind of person,
yes,
right?
And you can watch the latest episode of Bumble and Kimber as well, as so much more on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. Right, well, let's talk Jos Buttler then, Harmy, briefly. Will Macpherson in the Telegraph reported that Jos Buttler will face crunch talks. I think there's a little bit of editorialization there. Crunch talks about his future as England captain as the review of the T20 World Cup campaign goes on. Is his position up for discussion? I mean, there's nothing wrong with discussing it, but I mean, is there a viable alternative at the moment?
I don't think there's a viable alternative. I really don't want that to stop, the right decision being made. I seen a headline and thought, I wonder if this is Jos Buttler going over to the first franchise contract and never to be seen again for England when I seen the headline. But the actual headline is, the story is not as sort of sensationalized as what the headline is. The crunch talks bit, I think it was inevitable. It has to happen. I think there's an honest conversation to be had between Jos and Rob Key. Where England go, there's a lot of players going to be removed from that white ball unit. And it's whether does Rob Key and Jos Buttler feel as though he is the right man to take that team forward. I'd be amazed if it's Matthew Mott. But I still think Jos Buttler has the ability to lead a group of players onto a field and captain them properly, no problem at all. It was a debacle over the last 2 World Cups, but with a new team, a new squad, fresh energy. If Jos was the right man less than sort of 2 years ago, I still think he's probably the right man now. Now, it's whether Jos wants to move into that role and throw his sort of heart and soul in it for 3 years, taking to the next couple of World Cups. Or is he as well going to be one of the ones that, like Moeen Ali and one or two others, Chris Jordan and one or two others, who decide that probably the franchise route is the best thing for the next phase of my career? So I think that is the honesty part of the conversation. I've got no, I wouldn't get rid of Jos Buttler just because, we've had 2 bad World Cups. But I also wouldn't keep Jos Buttler just because there's nobody else. I think that's probably what Will McPherson's alluding to, the honest part of the conversation with Rob Key, to say, right, what's next? Like he did with Ben Stokes, what's next? We've got we might have a new coach coming in. We've got these 7 or 8 new faces that are going to come in. Is it right for English cricket that you manage them? Or is it right for English cricket that you come and play in World Cups? Don't play as many bilateral series. Go off and play in all the franchise tournaments you want. But we still have the best cricketer that's ever played the game in England in a white ball format at the top of the order for us. And I think that will probably be the crux of the conversation. So I think the sensationalized headline is great. But I think the story is at this moment in time, I think he's got an injury where he's going to miss probably the rest of the summer. And I think a conversation with Rob Key is needed to be had on where English cricket is going in a white ball format. And if Jos is the man to take them forward, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Let's talk money just for a second, Harmy, and let's be completely dispassionate about it, right? Let's take out Jos Buttler. Let's say there's player A and he has a business manager who says, here are your options, B, C, and D. You can stay as captain of England and you will earn this much, or you can give up international cricket, go the completely franchise route, and that's option B. And how much, I did some figures, and I don't think that Jos Buttler would necessarily be very much better off. He's very, very well paid in the IPL. He gets $500,000 in the SA20 for a month's work. And so it's not like the West Indies, for example. I mean, you look at some of these Test players and you think they are losing money. They could be doubling or tripling their revenue, their income, by playing franchise cricket. Playing for the West Indies is costing them money. With Jos, it's not like that. It's not like that.
No, it's not. And I think that's been the argument on TVs all around the world over the course of the last sort of 12 months about the state of Test match cricket. Michael Atherton, Ian Bishop and Nasser Hussain did a little bit on during one of the breaks and during this Test match. And I only seen 5 minutes of it. I haven't finished it yet, but and that is basically the crux of the conversation that you've just said, which is it comes down to money. Can we look after our Test players to keep them in the Test arena, or are we just going down the white ball format and the 4 teams, 5 teams, 6 teams are going to play Test match cricket, which is that's where we're heading up. From Jos's point of view, I think it's different when you're captain. I think that to have the huge honour of captain in your country, I think you only have that for a short period. So he will have the franchise route, not a problem later on. He can earn all that later on. I think at this moment in time, if I was Jos Buttler, I'd be going, the honour and the privilege of captain in my country is, I think that far outweighs any sort of franchise contract at this moment in time, because I think what he can do is he can do it for a little bit and then he goes off and be the also back in with the troops and make sure that the bilateral series aren't mine. I'll play in the World Cups, I'll play in your big series and still go SA20 and go IPL. I still even think he can possibly do that as captain, but I wouldn't like him to do that. But the honour of captain in your country, I think, is massive. And I think you'll see 2 different sides of that. If Jos Buttler is a player and not captain, then I can only see him playing in major tournaments for us. If he is a captain, then I think what that holds, the figure of being the leader of your country, I think that is a different argument all again. That's why he came back to play against Pakistan, when he could have stayed for the World Cup and could have stayed for the eliminators and the final of the IPL. And I think that's what Jos has got to get his head around. Is this? Does he still want to be the captain? who England still want him to be the captain, and he got the drive and determination to take us what will be a younger team forward the next 2 or 3 years, and probably park the littler tournaments, because he's still playing the SA20, he's still playing the IPL. Can he park the littler tournaments from a franchise point of view, from a money point of view, to make sure he's the best he can possibly for England? And I think that's what's going to have to happen with Rob Key over the course of, they bought themselves some time if he's injured between now and the end of the summer, moving forward, getting to the next part of SA20 coming up, because that's the next one, and then the IPL after that.
Okay, yeah. Every time I hear someone say, you just can't put a price on that, I think, yes, you can. You're just not trying hard enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You can. Everything's got a price. Let's talk Chris Silverwood then, returning to English cricket. I think he was struggling, wasn't he? Let's be honest, for the last 6 months in Sri Lanka. I think he was battling with that job. Still got a young family, and I think his CV's been doing the rounds of English cricket for a while now. But wonderful to see that he's been appointed as an assistant coach at the Oval Invincibles for the 100. But more importantly, it looks like he's being lined up to coach Yorkshire if Otis Gibson is replaced.
Yeah, obviously I'm disappointed for Gibbo, because obviously he's one of my sort of closest pals. I was there when Gibbo got the job at Yorkshire, and he's a great man. He'll not be lost for too long. He'll be back in English cricket somewhere. And again, how refreshing is it, man? As we said this a couple of years ago when Mickey Arthur got the job at Derbyshire, English cricket are going to be, the young players are learning off the best coaches. And to see Spoons, Chris Silverwood come back into English cricket, not many would have stuck that out. I know I couldn't have done it. As nowhere, the politics that Sri Lanka and everything that's gone, no matter what contract I've had, he's a good man, Chris Silverwood, and he's an exceptional coach. And I'm not sure many would have stuck out the sort of the shambles of what's happened in Sri Lanka. But he did a great job, won the Asia Cup with him. So good to see his name lined with Yorkshire. Good to see Darren Lehman's name. Darren Lehman, another serial winner when it comes to the franchise tournaments. He's a good man, good coach, Yorkshire through and through. So to see a ticket with Lehman and Silverwood on it, I'm not sure they can get them both, but one of them at the top of the ticket would be good. And I thought Anthony McGrath might have been coaxed back to Yorkshire as their head coach, but Mags has just taken the director of cricket, and I think he's doing everything at Essex now. I think he's in charge of making the teas as well. So it just seems as though Mags he's comfortably settled in Essex. So I thought McGrath's name might have been mentioned at Yorkshire, but to have Silverwood and Lehman, talked about Yorkshire. Great to see Spoons back with the Oval Invincibles, and Otis Gibson won't be out of a job for too long, because somebody will come and take Otis Gibson, hopefully in English cricket. The young players in this country are getting coached by some of the best, which for me is always great to see.
Talking of Jos Buttler and the SA20, did you see that Joe Root's joining him at the Pal Royals now? Joe Root's been signed by the Pal Royals. As you know, it's a slow pitch in Pal. Can be slow and low. It's a bit awkward to score on. Sort of 140 can be a winning score. So is that just so Kane Williamson has signed for the Sunrisers Eastern Cape, and now Joe Root, who's I think a better T20 player in my opinion. But so is that it though, Joe? You're going to play the home games, and we need a grinder.
Yeah, we need somebody. We need somebody. We need somebody just to. Normally the away in the football terms, it's normally the away games, the man marker, the holding player that looks after their best players. But I think what a coup that is for the SA20 to get someone like Joe Root, who is about to go past Brian Lara in the all-time run scoring list. That for me says everything about where Joe Root's at, and he's in the standing of the history of the game when it comes to the batting department. And there's another story that's going around that Ben Stokes is coming over to SA20 as well. So if you get Stokes and you've got Williamson and you've got obviously Root signed to play alongside Buttler, they say money talks, but these guys are getting really well paid anyway, especially the English lads. they're coming over, and they'll obviously enhance and make the tournament better. But if Paul Royals were looking for a player to utilise the surface and the best player possible, I mean, it wasn't going to be a big hitting six-hitter. It was always going to be somebody who could, score off every ball, make sure the field is manipulated, as well as, I can see him bowling 4 overs on that Paul's surface as well. So I think Joe Root's going over as an all-rounder. He's not going over just as a batter, because he can play a spin well on them slow surfaces.
Okay, on to the final word, Harmy. Mine, I saw a story that made me smile. The ECB have apparently made moves to whatever, copyright or trademark the name 100 in the event that it turns into a T20 tournament. Who'd have thought that, hey? That's my final word.
Yeah.
What's yours?
Again, I laughed at that when I seen that. I thought he is aware. Sanjay's leaving, going to Yorkshire as chief executive, it seems. So that's a good move for Yorkshire, because I think Sanjay's done as much as we don't like the 100, he's done a great job in marketing it and getting it sold and getting it off the ground, getting it to a point of sold. I mean, he's done an unbelievable job. So, fair play for Sanjay for that, and good luck when he does get to Yorkshire, because that's another tough gig as well. But who'd have thought that franchise owners around the world would come in, demand that England players are playing, demand that there's a schedule in the window that nobody else is allowed to play in, demand that the competition goes from 100 to 120. I mean, we've only been seeing it for 2.5 years. But again, I'm gonna go away from the 100, because I'm sick of getting wrong for talking badly about it. My final word is, we've had him a couple of times as a final word. Scott's picked him out as well. Rocky Flintoff, 100 on, obviously, against Sri Lanka in the England under-19s as a 16-year-old. I think the 10th of all time youngest cricketers at under-19 level to score 100. And when I've seen some of the footage, I'm going, I've seen this before. I have seen it before. So it was brilliant to see. It was fantastic to see Rocky, who he didn't get too many runs in the first Test match, got 100 in the second, and then at the weekend played for Lancashire for the first time against Cumbria. He got 15 not out. So good on you, Rock. Well done. The boy's got a bright future, and nobody better to have by your side when he comes to trying to be forging a career as an all-rounder, because his dad wasn't bad either.
It is eerie how similar he looked. It's absolutely brilliant. Anybody who feels hard done by that because they didn't get to watch Andrew Flintoff play, you can now. 16-year-old version. It's brilliant. You've been listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you have missed any of the show and you want to catch up, you know what to do. You can download the podcast from the Following On feed, available via the free talkSPORT app. We'll be back at the same time next week to look back at the third and final test between England and the West Indies. But for now, this has been Following On
AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.